Hey everybody, welcome to Hear Us Out. I'm Patrick.
And I'm Paul. How's it going?
Not too bad, my good friend. And you know what we're going to do, folks? We're going to take on the universe's largest and most difficult question. And the most large and difficult question there is in the entire universe should be very clear to you all by now because you've seen the thumbnail or you've seen the title of the video. I hope. And that is, what's your favorite movie of all time? There is no easy way to answer this. There's no good way to answer this. But there are a few rules that I think everybody can apply to it in their head. Because when someone runs up to you and says, what's your favorite movie of all time? You're being asked what's your favorite, not what's the best. So we're not here to talk about the best movie of all time. We're not here to talk about the most artistic movie of all time, or the most successful movie of all time, or the movie with the most banana references in it of all time. This is just, how do you answer that tricky question of what's your favorite? So, Paul, when someone asks you this, are you actually happy to be asked? Or are you part of, because there's a group of people that just hate being asked this question.
I don't think I'm hated. I don't think I hate being asked the question. I think it's just. I think my problem is that like if you're asked the question over a similar period of time. So like if someone goes, "Oh, what's your favorite movie?" and then like 2 days later, the same person or a person of the group that was there goes, "What's your favorite movie?" and it changes, that there's some kind of like, "Oh, why did it change?" And you're just like, because I'm a human and
Yeah.
I'm also a film like nerd, so like I could have watched the change. I could have been like, "Oh yeah, I really like Waterworld. I should go watch that again." And then I watch it and I'm just like, "This is my favorite movie." And then they're just like, why did you say The Postman was your?" I'm just choosing.
You're just choosing Kevin Costner epics. Why is Dances with Wolves? Although it's
Yeah.
much better than the aforementioned Waterworld.
Yeah. But yeah, like it's one of those questions that just changes. It change as a film person. I definitely think that I need to caveat it at any point that it's just like there's a select few that will stay there,
That's it.
but there is like what 75% change. So my top 10, like probably two of them will never change. But then the other eight are kind of like just 20% or 80%. So
And that's why this is a talk now. Full disclosure: anybody who was watching our live stream 3 or 4 weeks ago, this kind of half came up in as a tangent to something we were talking about, and it ended up becoming a video idea. Of it's how do you answer that question? What plays into how you answer that question? Some people I know have an answer that they never deviate from, and they just pick one film, and even then, those people quite often haven't talked to them because I'm fascinated by this question. But like, how are you able to do that? And quite often the answer is, I just don't care when I'm telling someone else. So I picked one film that's a good enough approximation of how I generally feel, and I just get the question over with. Whereas me and you, film nerd people, quite often, we're like, this is either an opportunity for a conversation, it's an opportunity to tell somebody about something about yourself, or something that they may never have heard of and seen, and maybe they'll go and see it, all that kind of stuff. But Paul, before we go any further, I think we have to talk about the important things going on in the world. And the important things are, you have to remember that sharing helps the world. Sharing helps. And if you share this video, that will help us and possibly the world. But you know what else? If you hit a like right now or a subscribe, you will be feeding the algorithm. And that little bad boy can't go hungry either. Promised I'd start getting this in earlier in our videos because apparently that's what YouTube people do. So yeah, like, share, subscribe. But most importantly, and for the live, our lovely live patrons who I've seen before, hello all and good evening to Brew and Pop Culture. It's great to have you with us and everybody else. I would love, as we're going along, to get feedback on whether or not you think a pick is a terrible idea, or whether or not you have an approach that you take when you're answered or asked this question. So, Paul, where I want to start this conversation, I also regret this topic highly, everybody, because I'm going to be distracted anytime I try and pull up one of about 1,000 images
yeah,
that we have possibly had here.
this
Because,
this
Paul,
is
you
the
alluded
other.
that it's never one answer and it never stays the same.
No, that's the problem. Like it's we had to when we were setting this up, it was literally just like I'm gonna send him like 10 like possible images of films that I really enjoy that are my favorite currently, but like in this piece, I could literally change my mind.
Yeah.
Like there's a few there I know will say, but then there could be like you could mention something and I'll be just like, no, that's my
Yeah.
favorite.
I was about to say there would be a point where we're both angry, or one of us is just angry at ourselves because the other one has said something, and we're going, "Why isn't it?" In fact, I have a piece of paper beside me with stuff that isn't in the imagery list. Stuff like Scott Pilgrim versus the World.
That's a good film.
I just want it mentioned. Do I give it as a pick for my favorite very often? No. But this is the thing, Paul. So I'm going to throw over to some imagery of some sort. I tend to answer this the same way no matter who asks in one respect. I'll go, I don't know if I can pick one, but I'll give you 3 as a flavor. So that's kind of my rough approach. No matter who's asking, whether I know them well, whether I don't know them well, whether they're young or they're old, or whatever I believe their motive to ask might be. And the easy thing for me is I will always kind of say it'll be 12 Angry Men. It's stuck with me. It's never not been in my list of favorite movies. So it's my 12 Angry Men. 95% of the time is part of my answer. For anybody who's watched the show, you're already bored of hearing about 12 Angry Men. This isn't. We're not going to go through each one of these movies, folks. This is more about the question than the answer. 12 Angry Men, great film. It embodies everything I love about cinema and in some ways humanity. It is for me. It's the magic, all in one. It's great acting, great everything. But a lot of people haven't heard of it, seen it, aware of it at all. So then I've got the other 2, and these are the ones that rotate a bit more. Jaws is an easy answer. Jaws is a very easy answer because most of the world's seen it. I think everybody's aware of it. It's big enough in the pop culture landscape.
Yeah.
Jaws will give you that connection of somebody will be like, oh, right, yeah, Jaws. There's a good pick. A lot of people will be like, grown standard pick. Also, I swap Jaws out for Ghostbusters sometimes. Ghostbusters will go in there. Sometimes it'll be 12 Angry Men, Ghostbusters, and Jaws. But most of the time, it is 12 Angry Men, and let's say Ghostbusters for the sake of right now, and then a film called Shine. Shine, again, this is the one where I will only include it if I know there is enough time to have a conversation. Because with it, 12 Angry Men, I can go, it's an old movie you may not have seen. It's a classic. It's about a jury. It's great. It's all set in one room. The jurors' room where they're trying to come to a decision. And it's about the difficulty of coming to a decision and the different parts of humanity that are trapped in there. Shine, I know I'm going to need time if I bring it up, because even though there's, Academy Awards and Golden Globes and all the rest tied to this movie, very few people have ever heard or seen it for some reason. I don't know how that happened. It's one of my favorite cinema experiences of all time. It is 100% guaranteed to make me cry. It is also 100% guaranteed to be a recommendation from me to somebody. When they say, can you recommend any films? Something maybe I haven't seen. Shine, yeah. Have you seen 12 Angry Men? Yes. Shine, there you go. And it's about a concert pianist and his whole life, David Helfgott. It's got the whole daddy issues angle, which I didn't realize I had until I watched Ad Astra. And then, you've got a mental break and a very inspiring and sad and intense life story. And some of the most beautiful music you'll ever hear. So that's my stock canon. But the fun thing for me is I know I change it, not just because of how I'm feeling or whatever might have recently come up. Maybe I've recently watched Watchmen or something, and I'll be like, Watchmen's there. It makes the list, because I want to make sure people know that it's fantastic.
Yeah.
Most of the rest of the time, I look at the person who's asking me, and I think, have I just met them, and are they asking out of politeness? Have I just met them, and are they asking out of trying to get to know something about me or gauge me in some way? Or quite often, and particularly because of this show, is it somebody who's like, ugh, you do what on YouTube? Like you review movies or something? So what's your favorite movie? In which case, I will pretty much throw all 3 of those out. And I will go straight to Burt Reynolds with Cannonball Run, Smokey and the Bandit, and I will just name films that they will judge me harshly on. Yet it's still true. These are some of my favorite movies. So, Paul, what about you? When someone asks, what is it? What's your first go tos before you go to your alternates?
Iron Giant. Iron Giant's always been my favorite film. I went through. I think the reason I went through was why it's always been there is because I love that kind of like 50s, 60s kind of like low tech, future tech kind of thing. Always loved it. Retro kind of technology, and then it's animated. It's what like animation is a big part of kind of my film repertoire. That being Western animation to anime and like so like there's plenty of that in it. So I think it tells a lot about me straight off the bat, which is just like, and also it's technically a sci-fi, so it kind of gives you all three of
Covering
the
a lot
kind
of
of.
bases. That's true, actually.
So that's why I get it a lot. But it's actually the reason that it stuck with me within my list is because when I was in English class, it was a film in which we dissected. We dissected a couple of films, but Iron Giant has always stuck with me, kind of thing. So it's shaped, I guess, a lot of my kind of viewing criteria. Because like Finch with Tom Hanks, is an innocent robot that doesn't really know anything. Iron Giant is pretty much an innocent robot that doesn't really know anything. Like eventually he does and all that kind of stuff. But that's why it sticks with me in the kind of like that kind of, I guess, format. That's one of my favorites. And then this is the thing is after that, that's when it kind of changes and stuff like that. That's when when it morphs and stuff like that, depending on either the person or the type of conversation that we're having. Like if we're having a conversation about set pieces and prop design or sets or everything, Hellboy is one of my go-tos. Like that's one of the biggest ones. Like Del Toro very much likes a lot of. Oh, look at the little cat.
Yeah, I have nobody looking after the cat right now. So I couldn't tell if the audience could hear you over the sound of the door scratching. So I thought she's just joining the show tonight.
Ah, well,
Sorry,
that's great. We have another mascot.
you interrupted Hellboy. It'll be one of your favorites too. We'll watch it tonight.
So yeah, Hellboy is one of those kind of prop set ones. It's Del Toro as well, who's like monster. So it covers that kind of like monster kind of mentality of films that I really like. So it's a big staple. So I guess it does depend on which person I'm talking to. But if it's about sets or monsters or something like that, Hellboy always comes up. A lot of big horror person as well. So Event Horizon is obviously going to be on the cards at any point.
For those of you that are playing Here's Bingo, I've mentioned 12 Angry Men. We've now got Event Horizon. If we get a Taika Waititi before the end of the show, you can all shout bingo together.
Yeah. Event Horizon's one of those big ones because it's probably my favorite horror movie, specifically in a genre kind of setting, but not a sci-fi setting. I don't like that's the sci-fi setting keeps changing and that kind of stuff, but yeah, because I know a lot of people think that I'll choose a zombie film. So I'm a big zombie person, but I don't actually have a favorite zombie film. There hasn't been a film that has really grabbed me. Like Patient Zero. I know we don't have the image for that, but Patient Zero is a new one that's come up. That's like constantly piqued my interest. But yeah, like so, and then Dread as a comic book kind of person, I really like Dread.
See,
especially the new
that's
one.
great because that's a crossover for us. There was a few that crossed over on both our kind of wide lists. I know there's about 500 that cross over because we are who we are. But Dread and Watchmen were two that stood out as, yeah, they're on both our lists.
And they change or they alternate because I think I'm very defensive over Watchmen.
Me too.
Incredibly defensive. So like, it will be if someone, I know plenty of people who do not like it, and they'll be like, it's a terrible film and stuff like that. And I'll be just like, I'll double down and be just like, it's one of my favorite films, kind of thing. Just not even it's just a film that I think is misunderstood a lot. It's just
Agreed.
Like, it's not for everybody.
No, true.
I think, but yeah, Dread is also just the Carl Urban Dread is just a fantastic adaptation of the source material.
And funny thing for Dread, if you don't mind me, just because I want to bounce with you on this a little bit. Funny thing about Dread, and it came up in a conversation I had with somebody else today. It's the movie itself is brilliant. His portrayal of the character is brilliant. I think it is a brilliant movie, and it's one of my favorites. Not just because I think it's a brilliant movie. I will always remember when I went to see it, and I will remember the 3D experience that I had, being one of the great cinema moments. I've talked about it in the channel before. This was a 3D experience where 3D in movies made so much sense. There was this and Up. Up gave me a sense of how far the guy was going to have to travel at one point, and I'm like, 3D makes sense to me right now. It's adding to the story. Dread, pretty much after the opening scene, 3D played a part in making it feel like the movie that it was. And the conversation I had earlier on today was around the idea that they're re-releasing. Everybody's going back to Pandora for Avatar. They really should put Dread 3D back in the cinema. If we can find a way to do that and have a screening party, I would fill the room with people who have badgered going, if you missed it in the cinema, you missed out on one of the great moments.
I could not agree more. Like, I don't think Avatar is gonna. I don't think the re-release of Avatar is gonna do that great. I think a lot of the money that it made was people being curious about the hype about the CGI stuff. And then once they watched the movie, they were just like, the movie's not great. CGI is fantastic. I will die on the hill of the CGI is fantastic. I will in no way die on the hill of it is a good movie. But Dread 3D, I think the thing that really added to the 3D-ness, not to go down this rabbit hole too far, I think is the slow motion, because it's slow-mo and stuff. But if you ever want to kind of, one of the people who helped film that is Gavin Free of Rooster Teeth, and also on YouTube, the slow-mo guys. So jump over there. The reason I mention it is because we can put it into our analytics, and maybe he'll. But it's a fantastic use of 3D and slow motion, which I think is a fantastic kind of coupling of the two.
All in service to the story, and that's how many times have we said that if it's in service to the story, then it will increase your enjoyment of what you're watching, and it is like Dread is a case study in using technology and techniques to make things better. There may be a cat appearing behind me any second. Something is climbing up the back of my chair. I really hope it's a cat. If it turns out to be Godzilla, this will be one hell of an episode. Alien. Paul, can we take just a 2-second break to look at the comments, because I can see it filling up over here. No. So let's dive over for 2 seconds. Brew says, I have a very basic logic to what defines my favourite movie. The one I've watched the most. I can't use that, because when I was a kid, I recorded a few things off TV and watched them. So, I watched The Big Bus somewhere around the region of 125 times. I worked it out. The Big Bus, a movie none of you have really heard of, but put it this way. If they made Airplane and it was a bus, you've got The Big Bus. It is not a masterpiece, but for whatever reason, I made it part of my morning ritual for an entire school, summer holiday. And then the next year, out of nostalgia, did the same thing again and wore out the tape. I watched it a lot. Not one of my favorite movies.
Yeah, see, that's not to go too much into this comment, but yeah, I know there's plenty of films that have rewatchable, like Limitless, and I know they're all pretty new films, but Limitless, The Martian, Moneyball, which is, and oh my god, a
lot of the Marvel stuff.
Marvel stuff. I actually haven't rewatched them as much as probably Limitless, Martian, or
I didn't know that about Limitless with you, because it's the same with me with Limitless. I didn't know. I thought it was the only one.
It's a fantastic. It's just those films just have great rewatchability.
Yeah.
But they're not my favorite film, but they're just a great rewatchability. So I can't really. Because if I was to choose my favorite film based on how many times, Dumbo would be, because once again as a child it was on pretty much every single day. That yes, I am that kid who essentially watched the elephants on parade, not on acid.
There you go.
Which is so. But yeah, let's go on to some of the other ones.
I think that's good though. Popculture says, I like to break down my favorite by genre. What's my favorite rom-com, drama, sci-fi? What? See, that's the thing where I say you assess who's asking and why they're asking. If Popculture rocked into a room And me, you, and Brew, and our other cool patrons here were in a room together, and he cracked out the question of what's your favorite movie. I would know I was in a room where I could go, oh, good question. Like, do you want to do it by genre? Will we go? If I know that the other person's going to play ball and be excited about it, I will break it down by genre and time period. And sometimes I'll just be like, shall we start with best Bill Murray? And just be like, this is going to be fun for the next 2 hours.
Yeah, I was going to say that actor also can be a big thing as well.
Or director.
Yeah.
Spielberg, which we recently did an episode on. Link somewhere, but it's on our page. We're not so good at putting links in anymore. What's up next? Do you want to take one?
Favorite. Also, if you ask me favorite versus best, the different answers. Yeah, as we said at the start, favorite doesn't mean the best film. Because as I said, I have some awful choices of favorite film, and I don't care.
Yeah,
Treasure Planet is one of my favorite films, and I don't care. I don't care.
Which I have to ask you about actually after the comments.
I have a terrible memory, slow brain, so I generally have a couple that I answer with. Yeah, me and Patrick, we have a couple we can pull out of the bag.
Yeah, that's the thing. Like I mentioned, we'll end up being annoyed. I am going to wake up in the middle of the night tonight and go, why did I forget to mention First Blood, what everybody calls Rambo? Why did I forget to mention Rocky? Why didn't Stallone has a couple of masterpieces and people forget that? Why didn't I mention whatever? I'll probably wake up and go, did I mention Back to the Future? Did I mention it? Oh my God, did it get mentioned? Because my brain is made mostly out of broken parts. You'll never remember. It's always later when you're like, oh, God, why didn't I say Scott Pilgrim? Shine is great.
That's what I'm worried about.
Shine is great. I need to add it to the collection. Good. I'm glad you've seen it. I'm glad somebody can back me up that it's great.
I enjoyed this. It's a great film. It's contender for best animated film of all time. I agree. Couldn't agree more. A cat shows up talking about Hellboy is perfect.
It's true, actually. The scraping at the door was timed probably much earlier on. If I thought about it, I would have let her in because of Hellboy. I didn't get to see Dread in 3D, no theaters near, and that is a shame. And also the release and marketing for Dread we've talked about before, but it's a travesty. Wow, you guys like Limitless. I love that film. Yeah, and I've gotten hate for liking it too. I've had people give me genuine stick for liking Limitless, and they're like, "Oh, but that's a crap film." And by the way, those are usually the same sorts of people who, when they say, "What's your favorite movie of all time?" and you say whatever, they'll go, "You think that's the best movie of all time?" Like, oh no, you just made yourself the asshole because you asked me favorite, and then when I answered, you said you think that's the best. Yeah, I'm not the a-hole in that situation. They are.
Yeah, agreed. Best is different. It's definitely different. Favorite versus best is a topic I've discussed with Patrick many a time. Yeah.
Yeah, it's true actually. So I wanna. You just mentioned Treasure Planet.
Yes.
What is Treasure Planet? Paul?
It's a adaptation of, I can't pronounce that word, of Treasure Island. It's essentially just set kind of in the futuristic kind of world where they have solar sails, ships, and where black holes are like tempests,
right.
That kind of thing.
Very cool.
But it's all the same kind of story. It's got which goes Jim and Long John Silver and Bones, and so it's essentially, as I said, it's just Treasure Planet or Treasure Island, just set in space.
And was it one of Disney's last hand-drawn animations?
So this is the thing. It's 3D and hand animation. And little known, there was a small studio in Florida, not connected to the main kind of area of Disney and stuff, but it came out with Treasure Planet, which was Atlantis, which Michael J. Fox voiced the main character in, and a couple of other animated things, which are known as some of the best animation to come out of Disney.
Cool.
because they were all really unique things. They then closed down the studio. Like
Typical.
Disney just stopped funding them. Some of the best films, animated films from like the 90s, I would say, or early 2000s, came from this one studio, and it's seen as some of the best stuff that comes out of Disney, out of kind of independent or unique IP stuff. So
And of course, it wasn't recognized at the time and has been shuttered because that's the world that we so often live in. Paul, I'm gonna just blast out because I've got folders and folders of images from us, so I'm gonna use them to drive a little bit of the conversation. Because another of my picks, and I have it in a little folder here called Jaws Alternatives. For a long time, I would have said One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest was my favorite movie. It is one of the few things that supplants 12 Angry Men, in fact. And I found it's not that I fell less in love with it. I just found for some reason it was one that didn't work as an answer for people. It would either confuse them and go, why in God's name would that be your favorite film? It's it's depressing and blah blah blah, and then I'd have to go, yeah, it's actually a really good representation of me. It like that movie says a lot about me, and I like it for a lot of reasons. But I kind of I took it out of circulation because it always left a weird vibe. And strangely, I watched Old Boy, and it instantly went into this could possibly be one of my new stock answers for favorite film. And again, I took it out of rotation because, especially after the American remake with Josh Brolin and stuff, but a lot of people ended up thinking of Old Boy as its conclusion or its twist or whatever way you want to see it. And I'm not going to ruin it for anybody right now. But they're like, ew, were you okay with that? I'm like, oh my God, it's a work of art. Watch the movie. So a lot of dark stuff came out. And then The Crow, I think everybody's seen a lot of stuff hanging around me. I absolutely adore. I love and adore The Crow. And I did from the first time I saw it, and it still hasn't left me. It's on my list of favorite movies. But a lot of people tended to, especially in the kind of the mid 2000s, early 2010s, oh, we were goth then? Is that what it was? And it's like, not having this conversation, so I'm just not going to say it. And then any Western, if you bring it up, it becomes a genre conversation. Mm-hmm. If I say Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, Pale Rider, Outlaw Josie Wales, Magnificent Seven, all of which are some of my favorite films, it's like, oh, well, yeah, Westerns and blah, blah, blah. And you're like, okay, well, that's great. If I want to have a genre conversation about Westerns, cool. But quite often, if you're being asked by somebody who's trying to judge who you are, they're like, oh, so you like Westerns then? It's like, yes. I also, amazingly enough, I'm okay with musicals. It's... people, for whatever reason, I think Westerns is one of those genres, particularly for people my age, where it's like, if you say you watch snooker, they'll go, all right. Like, all of a sudden, you've aged yourself up by about 25 years. It's like, you watch Westerns and you like snooker, so how's the hip replacement going, and how's the hearing? It's an odd one. So I'm not judging anybody else. This is all on me. But that's why some of those alternatives kind of went out of rotation.
I get those ones. Old Boy, yeah, I guess, in the sense of why you would rotate it out. My thing would be just to avoid the conversation of going, no, the original one, and then you sound like the asshole because you're like, no. And even though like I know the phrase is used a lot, which is no, I like the old one like before.
Yeah.
The new, kind of, you get that weird conversation where you're like, I'm not a hipster. I'm old, I guess.
Yeah, I liked it the first time round. I was there when it happened.
Yeah, kind of thing. Cause like,
that's a really good point.
Because, Dark City and The Mist, I know I don't have images for those either, but The Mist is depressing as hell. And the amount of times where I've gone, like, I really, like, The Mist is somehow, like, not somehow, but it has gone into the rotation of favorite films. It's just like... And they go, yeah, but that ending's real sad. And I was like, the ending is amazing. Like, you don't, like, not every story ends happy. Like, come on. Like, you can't have that. Like, you can't have just every single, because there's no guessing.
But you also can't want that. either. You know, you can't want that. If that's what people want, they're like, oh, how can you watch a film with a depressing ending? I'm like, how can you not? How can you not watch films with all sorts of endings or all sorts of beginnings or all sorts of anything if you're like, I will only watch these things? It's not, I'm not going, I feel sorry for those people. It's more a case of, trust me, try it. You
Yeah.
might like it. Like I was always hard on myself for hating period dramas and stuff like that. And then, you know, I'm really glad that I kept trying them and ended up finding that Downton Abbey movie was really fun and was, you know, really enjoyable. So I'm like, great. I know they're not necessarily my thing, but if somebody gets it right, I'll still enjoy it. So I'll keep trying them. Okay, I'll probably end up not liking a lot of them, but when it's good, it's going to be good.
That's the thing, and I understand that people are just like, "Oh, I can't. I need to. It needs to be at a certain point, or I need to, I need to prepare myself." And it's like, I get that.
Yeah.
Listen, I have banged through a bunch of like depressing films, and like the people around me are just like, "How are you not? Like, how are you not affected by this?" And I'm just like, I guess I am affected by it, but I'm just not letting it in. You know, kind of like I know a lot of people who would just be like, I can't. I feel so sad. And just like, but the story is amazing. Nightmare Alley, which is a Del Toro film, which also really came out. That is a really depressing film, and like, could not love it. Like, it's not one of my favorites, but I really loved it, and like, it is nothing but depression. Like, I cannot stress how bad, like, how depressing that film constantly is, and like, my partner was just like, "This is an awful story for this person," and I'm just like, "Yeah." It's great.
Yeah, and I watched it quite recently, and again I'm with you that it's quite, oh, it's all the originals. I'm trying to find some imagery here. I didn't love it as much, but it certainly wasn't because it was because of its tone. If anything, its tone helped me get through it. Not get through it, but it you know, was one of the things I liked about it. That it was unflinchingly, unwaveringly, yeah, things aren't great here, folks.
Yeah, like that's the thing. 1 Hour Photo, which is a Robin Williams film.
Yes.
That's a really depressing film as well. And like, it's also Robin Williams, so it's kind of one of those ones that it's like, it's something that you don't recognize him for doing. You know, it's like What Dreams Will Come and stuff like that. Like Bicentennial Man and some of those films are more kind of his alley because they're kind of lightheartedness.
Yeah.
But there's a selection of films. What Dreams Will Come, Insomnia, not so like. Insomnia, I think, is more of a surprise,
Yeah.
kind of thing. But 1 Hour Photo, Final Cut, and which is What Dreams Will Come, are like kind of a little bit outside of his normal kind of genre of film. So it's like, it's very powerful. Like Patch Adams is great, but 1 Hour Photo is one of those films that you get people to watch and they're just like, my god, why would you watch this with Robin Williams, the guy who's meant to make everybody, and you're just like, because it's brilliant,
because he's a fabulous actor. And also, everybody should really get over the fact that they don't understand that Good Will Hunting is a great film. I don't care if it's been memed to death. Good Will Hunting is a great film as well. But I'm really, really glad that Robin Williams got a mention in this, because it would feel wrong if he didn't. Like, literally, that's just how I feel about that. I think it would feel wrong if he hadn't got a mention.
No, like, it gets, because another question I have been asked on the kind of subgenre of favorite film has been, what's your favorite film with this actor in it?
Right.
And you're just like, okay, well, at least you've narrowed it down for me.
Yeah.
But now we have to go into essentially their entire body of work. And like, I know that there's certain people who are just like, I've watched 6 films of those. I didn't know that they had like 34 to their name. And it's just like, strap in.
Yeah. We're going to be here for a minute. Well, I'm going to throw up some, because there's a whole other question of what's your favorite 80s movie? Or what was your favorite movie when you were a kid? If that was the 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, whatever it might be. But 80s movies tends to be a genre, a period, because everybody's seen either The Breakfast Club or Pretty in Pink, or they've seen Back to the Future or Inner Space or Goonies or Gremlins or whatever it might be. And Die Hard, and you name it. A lot of Top Gun, a lot of good stuff came out. So what do you ever rotate into your favorites from there? For me, I don't rotate in Gremlins or Goonies. As much as I love them, they're favorites, but not in that way. They're not. I would tell somebody they're my favorite movie, and again, it's not. I'm trying to manicure the outward personality I have or anything. It's more a case of I don't know if they are. Like they have a special place in my heart, but does that make them one of my favorite movies? Whereas Back to the Future, well, there's no two ways about it. It's one of my favorite movies. Yet I rarely give it as an answer, and I don't know why.
I think it's because it is from. So I agree on Gremlins and Goonies. I think they are
Personal
really good
favorites.
films. Not see for me. I don't think they'd be personal favorites. They're great films. I really enjoyed them. I love them. I'll defend them, kind of thing. But I'll never put them on. I don't think I'll ever rotate them onto the list. Back to the Future, I think, is one of those films that it's just widely accepted as a
Yeah.
favorite film.
Yeah, maybe that's
That I
why.
guess, that I guess it doesn't rotate onto my kind of thing.
It's a given.
I think,
It's just a given.
yeah,
Yeah.
I think it's not along the lines of like E.T. and stuff like that. Like films that are just universally loved
True.
by practically everybody. I think it's very difficult to find someone who's just like Back to the Future sucks because you're just like, how have you survived any conversation with anybody by saying that?
It's very,
Like,
very true, actually.
So
Do you mind if I actually throw up one other thing real quick? I often get asked why I wouldn't pick comedy or something like that, because that's you're a zombie. I'm cars and comedy and all that kind of stuff. But for me, it's weird. I will usually mention Mel Brooks or Monty Python or something in the spoof genre as a kind of a So it's 12 Angry Men, Shine, Jaws, 12 Angry Men, Ghostbusters, Shine, whatever I might say. They're like, oh, and you're never going to go far wrong with Mel Brooks at his best, or if you like Monty Python, then you kind of have to enjoy almost everything they've ever done. Or a lot of people forget that Airplane was actually a brilliant movie, something like that. But I'll never be like, my favorite movie of all time was Monty Python and The Holy Grail. I just won't, because then I will be like, but what I really want to make sure I say is, 12 Angry Men. There will always be a reason that something else will jump over it. Whereas I think like Blazing Saddles, an amazing movie that people aren't watching anymore for all sorts of reasons, that I don't necessarily understand in some ways. But I can't, in all good conscience, say, yeah, favorite films. They are that kind of personal favorites, but not something that I would think to say to somebody else, this is my favorite movie. Comes up in conversation about movies, but not, this is my favorite.
yeah, I definitely comedies are a difficult one for me because I think they period that no
They age themselves, yeah.
Yeah, and like as you said, Blazing Saddles has not been watched because I know there's a very particular scene that a lot of people will be offended by, and it's just like you don't understand.
Watch the
Like,
whole movie. Like,
but
yeah.
this is it's one of those things where it's just like about that scene, and like it's one of the top. Like there's a scene in Blazing Saddles that's also what seen as one of the top like best comedic scenes in the world. Like it's on every single like top 100 list or something like that, which is that Beans farting kind of one.
Yeah.
But I think that comedies tend to age themselves out of kind of circulation in a lot of ways, and I think spoof films, particularly ones of the newer kind, which we have a whole thing about.
Not another teen movies. Yeah.
Yeah, they absolutely like. Spaceballs does not age itself because it's targeting a very particular set of films. It's not like every genre of like sci-fi. It's just like we're gonna take on Star Wars and that's it.
And Star Wars will now and forever be part of the pop culture firmament. So they picked something that is almost future proofing them and itself. So yeah, I get what you mean exactly.
But it's very difficult to be like my favorite comedy film is Hot Shots, and then someone goes, oh, but there's a whole thing about like Saddam Hussein in that, and it's just like, why are you bringing that up? It's a comedy film. Like,
yeah,
if you don't like a scene, then just don't talk about it, or bring it up. Like you can't. I'm gonna get into a rant.
Yeah, okay. Well,
People
no,
who
but
say
you were right though. You are right.
I know.
Yeah.
I just feel that when people say you can't watch certain films, you can't because of them aging and stuff like that. I'm just like, you are getting to a level of book burning that we can't have anymore.
Yeah, it's true.
You know, kind of thing.
It's
you know?
true. And look, I've thrown up a few others because I know one of them is going to be on your list. But you kind of talked about comedies and things aging themselves, and this was a random folder of stuff that I didn't want to forget to mention. Big Trouble in Little China, one of my favorite movies of all time. It every now and again gets a mention, depending on whether or not it's at the top of my mind. Stripes, when people mention Bill Murray and like, oh, Ghostbusters, oh, who's your favorite, Bill Murray, Dan Aykroyd, or whatever. I'm like, oh no, I don't have a favorite in that respect. But if you want to talk about Bill Murray, a lot of people overlook Stripes, and Harold Ramis is in that too, and it's amazing. And I actually think he does a better job in it than he does in Ghostbusters as Egon almost, which is saying a hell of a lot. But then you've got like Trading Places. A huge part of my film history is actually weirdly Eddie Murphy making things like 48 Hours and the original Beverly Hills Cop and even Beverly Hills Cop 2. But we'll stop there because we're not going any further.
You don't like that gun, that weird gun that Sarge built.
But no, like Trading Places. I love Trading Places. I genuinely do, and it could easily get a mention if it's off the top of my mind. But again, I will never mention it if it's an audience that I think will just be like, I've never heard of it, explain it to me. Because it's going to be too much of an awkward explanation. Whereas Aliens of this group, Paul, Aliens has made it into the list. And it has been said multiple times of, yeah, what's your favorite movie? Sometimes I'm just going to give a one-word answer. I'll just go Aliens.
Yeah.
Like I'm fine. I don't get the I didn't answer correctly, or I'm like, yeah, Aliens covers an awful lot of stuff for me.
It's a good answer.
Yeah, it's pretty solid.
Yeah, like it's. I think both of us. I think what is it? Close Encounters of the Third Kind would have been another kind of one of those kind of good mentioned kind of ones. Yeah, I don't see. Yeah, I get like there's certain Trading Places is great. Trouble in Chinatown is great. Stripes has such a cast. Look, people, if you haven't watched Stripes, watch it. It has such an amazing cast from that age, of just amazing comedians that like or comedic actors, kind of thing.
John Candy
but yeah, no, like.
Best. John Candy at his best. Yeah, you're just making me think about the cast now. It's fantastic.
John Candy, and that's before he went like Uncle Buck and Trains, Planes,
It's before he became superstar John Candy, in fact.
But like, yeah, it's it gets worse and worse because like you could also end up having films like Dune come out, and you're just like, great, now that gets added to the new list of favorite films, kind of thing.
Well, I wanted to ask, can you tell me, because when you put Dune on the list, I was like, really? Is it on your? It's made. Wow, because I knew you liked it, and like we did a whole special on it. We had like a prep. We had an episode before, an episode after, all sorts of stuff. It was that level of good for you, because I thought it was really good, and I was really hoping it was going to be as good as it was for you. I think we were both talking about Ghostbusters Afterlife not crushing me, and Dune not crushing you. I'm really happy that you can already have it in this conversation.
Yeah, it's one of my favorite films now.
That's awesome.
And it wasn't. I watched it and was like, that was brilliant. And the more times I've either watched it or thought about it, I'm just like, man, it is one of my favorite films. I do know particularly why, because Villeneuve has done an excellent job on kind of the story construction, and also the set pieces and costumes and everything. It's all kind of one big package kind of thing. So it's become one of my favorite films. But I also know that I have a type, because Elysium. It turns out that Elysium and Hellboy and Dune and a lot of things that have like practical effects as well as mixed in with CGI are like slowly shooting to the top of my number. And I know exactly why. Is because there's an interview with Tom Hardy, and he's just like, and it's about Venom, and he's just like, sometimes I'm not even there. There's no one there. There's just a tennis ball, and I'm just like, I hate that. And I understand with a Venom character, you can't really have someone there or something like that, but from the Tom Hardy's thing of just having someone having there with a big hat on with the face of like Venom.
Yeah.
I was like, it must be so much more difficult for actors to kind of talk to a tennis ball as if it's an actual character. Whereas you've got like Elysium and Dune and Hellboy and several others that actually have like a lot of the stuff there, like that an actor can immerse himself more into it. That I'm like, these are becoming more and more my favorite kind of films. Kind of thing,
before they become extinct, because there is such a push to, like, a lot of new movies are called movies, but really what they are digital animation in the extreme. You know, there's more effect than there is reality or practical, let's say. And it's why it's taking longer and longer, and it's getting harder and harder for studios to get their movies shot and out, because they spend so long in post with the hard-working people who never get recognized, the digital effects people and the digital effects animators. I'm really glad. I know you mentioned Elysium, so I want to just say there's one, District 9. District 9 isn't on the piece of paper or in this. District 9, everybody should see it. I think it's in my top, 50, 100, whatever it might be. But I'm really, really glad that Dune made it on your list. I'd like to throw over the comments because we haven't been there for a little while, Paul. So let's take a hop over if you want to start with one. You got a Treasure Planet is great.
Great soundtrack, and Martin Short doing a voice of robots. Can't go. Yeah. Martin Short does the voice of the navigator droid.
I love Martin Short.
He's a great voice actor in this as well. There's plenty of people in this that are great. The guy, Fraser's brother.
Playing Niles Crane. I can never remember that actor's name.
No,
I love that guy.
Yeah, he's in it. He plays one of the characters.
What a great voice too. Bruce says, I need to see Oldboy. I know there's a remake, but I need the original. Yes, you do. Good man. You will love it. There's no way you won't love it, and we're not going to say anything more about it because it's a spoilable movie.
I used to saw the film Crow and Nightmare Before Christmas as favorites, but it usually scares people that think I'm crazy and evil. Yeah, don't worry. Start telling them that Mist is your favorite film, and if they don't know, go watch it.
Or Event Horizon for some people, because they're like, really?
Yeah. Horror's not my thing, but I'm glad I checked them out. I found some great movies.
Mm-hmm.
That's the thing. I do know that horror is one of those not subgenre, but genres that doesn't have as many people involved in it, and then it also has plenty of subgenres in it. Like, I don't know, Bru's a kind of horror person as well, but A Thousand Corpse.
House of a Thousand Corpses is great, and I'm not the horror guy, but yeah, I thought that was great.
Like, is one of those kind of like
was that Rob Zombie?
Yeah,
fair play to him.
Like, there's a few of those kind of level of horror movies that I know people have, like, I've told people going like, I really like that film, and they're just like, that film, like, scared me out of a relationship or something like that,
Yeah, I know what you mean, but that's the thing. Horror, spoiler alert, there may be a future episode on genres that don't get love that they should. I think horror is up there, and I think musicals is up there. Everybody has a weird thing about musicals. I'm not going to say it's not my genre, so I'm not the one that could speak and defend it, but I think it's weird how many people go, oh yeah, I couldn't watch a musical. And you're like, yeah, but have you tried these three? And they're like, oh crap, they're really good. Same thing with horror. You give people the good stuff, and all of a sudden they don't call it horror. They're like, well, that wasn't really a horror movie. That was more of a blah. And you're like, yeah, it really was. You just liked it.
It's more of a psychological thriller.
Yeah.
And you're just like, what do you fucking call horror, man? Sad ending can be impactful. I like an ending that makes me feel something: sadness, joy, confusion, a sore face from laughing. So,
great comment.
It's my thing with your comment is the fact is that I don't think if you were to watch two of those, I don't think you get a lot of enjoyment even out of those two without the other ones as well. That's my, like, not picking on your comment is very, very good. Just for those people who are just like, I like to watch just happy movies.
Yeah.
Like, how happy can you be without watching like Schindler's List and then watching Up? Like,
Yeah.
And I don't mean doing that at the same time. I just knowing that you have a depth of sadness there to be, in, like, I guess, manipulated by a film.
And Paul, you've just got called out. Paul needs to break down Nightmare Alley. I didn't love it. I feel like I missed something. And that echoes exactly what I was saying. Because I again, I didn't love it. I could see the artistry in its construction and its execution, but it didn't connect with me, or it left me a little bit flat. We may talk about what format we could do. We might do a short one on Nightmare Alley and do a bounce back and forth, because quite often you are one of the two of us will like something the other one doesn't, and after a good half-hour conversation, they'll be like, "Oh, I'm going to rewatch it because I think maybe I was in the wrong mood that day or something." So yeah, nice.
That's 50% of the time as well. And also, I know that Del Toro films can be very specific to a fan base. So
This is true too.
what's your favorite film? Continues to rattle off a list of 50 movies. We did mention, I think, 3 films at the start that were our favorites that tend to stay on the list.
Yeah.
But as movie people, it
Yeah.
changes. Or not the top three.
And I think Jared's right. That happens to people. It's like, what's your favorite film, and then it turns into discussion. That's why I love the question. I think it's cool. Popculture says my new favorite that a lot of people do like is Yesterday. Oh yeah, Yesterday, the Beatles kind of homage, technically sci-fi movie. I watched it on repeat during dark days, and it'll always be on my list because of the Hope Bright. Yeah, that's excellent. I went to the cinema to see that because I knew nobody was going to go and see the damn thing. And I have a thing when even if I'm only mediocre, kind of halfway interested in a film, if I know that it's going to get absolutely no support in this country, I'll usually force myself to get out and get into a cinema to put just one more box office receipt so that our cinemas will keep showing us stuff that nobody goes to. And it means I've seen some real rubbish too, though.
Kingpin and Joe Dirt are some of my favorite comedy. Yep.
I love Kingpin. Joe Dirt's a stretch for me because I think Kingpin's fantastic. I want to have the Joe Dirt conversation, but not today. That's an interesting pick.
Dirty Work, I think it is. I think that's Norm.
Dirty Work, Norm Macdonald. Yeah.
That's one of my favorite lines in any comedy, which goes, I can't stay. I have to go work out at the gym. What? Like, I love how he even is surprised by what he says. It's a fantastic line.
Oh, bless him. God rest Norm. Here we go. So Brew says, and I knew Brew was going to bring this because I was hoping he would. Brew's our musical maestro. It's like loving an album, but one song you hate, so decide the album is dreadful. Nonsense. Yeah, and there are so many parallels in this question of what's your favorite band, what's your favorite album, what's your favorite song. If you can give one answer, you're pretty amazing. But I think it's equally as interesting question in the musical realm. Groundhog Day. There you go. Brew did it. That's the one that makes me angry that I didn't think to add it. Ugh. I'm just going to say that Stripes and Ghostbusters is representing everything Bill Murray's ever done. Groundhog Day will always be a favorite. Watched it with my family a couple of weeks ago. Oh, that's awesome. Groundhog Day is a cracker. It's just a cracker, and it is one of my favorite films.
Groundhog Day gets a lot of love. A big musical fan. I love it. Random song and dance makes the movie. I gotta say that I like my parents made me go to a lot of musicals when I was back in the day doing plays, and now it actually has just made me really enjoy movies that are musicals. Like, I know Phantom of the Opera is not the best film in the world. I know that the singing isn't great, but man, do I belt out songs while watching that film. Like, don't know what it is. And The Miz with Hugh Jackman.
I cry every time. I am not going to lie to you on this tube of you. I cry every time I watch Les Mis. And if I hear Anne Hathaway just mutter those words, I dreamed a dream, and it's like, oh God. But I can't turn away. I can't turn it off. I have to listen to it all the way through. And I do get lump in throat, tear in eye. The last comment. Yeah. A horror that is becoming my favourite is The Witch. Oh my God, I'm so angry at you right now because I watched that at the weekend. This is the your man Eggers film, the guy that did the Northman and Lighthouse. I hated it. I absolutely hated it. It is one of my least favourite films of all time. I am very much looking forward to talking to my good musical friend Brew, and I am going to tell him in real life, no. Just put it down. No. Just no.
The Witch is. I enjoyed The Witch.
Did you enjoy The Witch? Oh, another day. You all. Let's
Well,
move
I
on.
think you've just witnessed the end of no.
Let's just move on. I'm gonna clean. I'm gonna clean my my palate a little bit. I'm gonna throw up some more randomers. Goodfellas. Everybody. The thumbnail got what everybody in Ireland answered for a while. What's your favorite movie? If you were a guy, you had to say Shawshank Redemption. It was like it was being handed out because you either got to pick Gladiator or Shawshank Redemption, and that meant you were a man and it was safe and you were manly and you're okay. Or if you had pretense of wanting to like movies, you could say, oh, Godfather or Godfather Part 2. Oh, but I hate Godfather Part 3. And some of those people had never even seen Godfather Part 3. It just became such a cliche that was the answer. But for me, it was always funny. When someone would say Godfather, I'd go, you know, Goodfellas is a pretty good pick. Still watch Goodfellas once a year. Glenn Ross is one of those films that if I want to say, here's a modernized take on some of the style of 12 Angry Men as far as, single room, almost stage play style movie making, Glenn Ross is up there. Big Short, we have one particular viewer who hates it, and I'm still not sure why. I believe it was called misogynistic. It's The Big Short. I somebody will explain that to me someday. I think The Big Short's a fantastic movie, and it is one of those ones that went straight into my top 10 when I watched it. But the one that I'm getting to, Paul, here is The Dark Knight.
Mm-hmm.
Does The Dark Knight make it on your list of favorite movies of all time?
It does. I think it's that. Then I'll be honest with you. I know I'm going to get a little bit of stick. The new Batman is slowly creeping into that list as well.
Oh wow!
But The Dark Knight with Heath Ledger, Joker, is one of the best portrayed Jokers on screen. Which I just couldn't. You can't not have it.
I think it's just a fantastic film, and it hits my favorite list. It just does. Although I can see Adam mentioned it, Glengarrigan, I caught it out of the corner of my eye. Coffees for closers. Yes, it is. ABC always be closing. Anyway, so Paul, I think there's a couple from your list that we didn't kind of get to that I want to quickly do before we go, if I can just pick them out.
I think it's like Iron Man, John Wick.
Yeah. So Iron Man, agreed. I think it's a stunning film. John Wick, I loved it till they started making sequels. And I usually say sequels don't affect an original for me, but it's not going in a direction that I think I'm gonna stay on board with, and I'm almost like, oh please, can I just watch the original? Anytime John Wick, 15 will be in production next year, I'm like, no, I just give me the puppy, give me the Mustang, give me John Wick.
I agree and disagree. So I think John Wick 2 is, I've said it before, is a masterclass in kind of doing a sequel. It builds upon the world and all that kind of stuff. I do agree the Pendulum or Parabellum is like, it's as close as Jumping the Shark as you possibly can get, kind of thing. But I like John Wick. It's just a simple action film. It's just, that's it.
It is,
and it's Keanu Reeves being like just literally a robot. Like you could replace him with a robot arm, just shooting people in the face.
Yeah,
and there'd be just as much kind of like, I think you just had to put a sad face on it when the dog gets killed, and then just have the robot arm go through and just shooting people in the face.
And
that would be the.
And I am watching time. I'm going to particularly though, and I orchestrated it this way, Paul. John Wick wouldn't make my list of favorites as much as I love it. Die Hard might, but the last image I want to throw up before I go back to the two of us is Watchmen, just because I think deep down it's maybe the one that we get most uppity about if people are crappy about it, because you're like, you haven't watched it properly. Get over the fact that there's a blue schlong. That's not the entirety of this movie. If that's all you got from it, then you didn't see the right one. And all the other complaints that people have. So Paul, final roundup of the comments and away we go, because the new Batman is going down. Each time I think about it, I dislike it. Popculture just no, it's not exactly how I feel. I'm looking forward to watching the Batman again to see if my memory, which is becoming more and more negative, is being unfair or not. Because again, one watch in a cinema, it didn't connect with me as much at the time. We talked about this afterwards, but it's going up for you, so that makes me think, well, I want to see it again. I'm looking forward to seeing it again.
It's a different Batman, I agree.
Oh yeah.
It's also, as I said, it's Batman after 2 years, and he's still full of revenge and rage and stuff like that. But now he's realized he has to become a symbol. It's essentially the story from Batman Begins, but in a lot less kind of like realistic and nice way. Like this world is shitty.
Yeah.
Like, and that's it.
My brain just keeps screaming, it would have been brilliant if it had been split in two or been made 45 minutes shorter and stuck with one story.
We've talked about length of movies as weirdly getting longer and longer and stuff like that, and which we probably maybe do an episode on. I don't think I count the episode, the length of the movie in any way against it.
I know.
I definitely think you could do a tighter movie without it, but I'm not gonna.
Yeah, no, I know exactly what you mean. So, favorite movies, Paul. If I was to give one answer right now, I would say 12 Angry Men, or Shine, or Aliens, or what about you? What would be the first words out of your mouth if I held you right on the spot? Iron Giant.
Iron Giant.
Good man.
Like Iron Giant.
I love it. So, folks, I haven't seen you all writing in what your favorite picks are. So that means you get a chance now to go into the comments down below and put them in there. I'm really, really looking forward to reading the comments on this video.
Oh yeah.
Because if nothing else, it's going to give me an idea of how many Joe Dirt fans there are out there. So fair play. I'm also really, really looking forward to probably people mentioning movies that I've forgotten completely about or possibly never even seen.
That's the worry. I'm going to go through the film, through the comments, and just be like, damn it.
Oh, a quick check on the list. Terminator 2. Anyway, I'm Terminator. Okay, Paul. Like, share, subscribe, and all that good stuff. Can you say goodnight to the folks? I said Jaws at the start. I did say Jaws at the start, thank God. Oh, good. And Bruce picking Jaws. Great. Cool. Thank God it was covered.
Cool. Thanks very much for watching. I've been Paul.
I've been Patrick.
And we've been Hear Us Out. See you next week.
See you next time. Good luck.
Bye.
Bye-bye.